You're a human being, which means you want things. Not just oxygen and water and a roof that doesn't leak when it rains. You want comfort, stability, options. Maybe a slightly bigger TV than your cousin. Maybe a car that doesn't make a suspicious noise every time you turn left. Maybe a life that feels just a little less tight around the edges. And here's the uncomfortable truth. There isn't enough for everyone to have everything. Not enough houses, not enough beachfront property, not enough prime jobs, not enough slightly larger TVs. That tension between infinite desire and limited resources is the starting point of economics. If there were infinite pizza, infinite land, infinite time, and infinite money, economics wouldn't exist. But there isn't, so we have to choose. And every choice has a cost. My name is Thomas. I am an economist and one of the 3 pioneers of Afix Lite. I have spent a number of years studying, analyzing data regarding production, distribution, and consumption of resources, goods, and services. I use economic theories, statistics, and modeling to advise governments, businesses, and organizations. I know how boring an economics class can be, and even now, many still do not know what economics is all about, and how it plays a major role in their total well-being, and in the well-being of the country they live in. Luckily for you, you found this video. I have put together a simplified analysis that summarizes everything you need to know about economics. I will number each section with a base topic, and explain it in the most simplest way possible. Don't worry, it's going to be fun, so let's begin. 1. The invisible cage, scarcity. Scarcity isn't about being poor. Scarcity is about limits. You have 24 hours in a day. You have a certain income. You have a certain amount of energy. No matter how ambitious you are, those constraints don't disappear. And the moment you ignore them, life starts making decisions for you. When you choose one thing, you give up another. That's called opportunity cost. If you spend $2,000 on a vacation, you are not investing that $2,000. If you binge watch Netflix for 4 hours, you are not building a skill. If you stay at a job for security, you may be giving up growth, leverage, and higher income later. The cost of a choice is not just the money spent. It's the alternative future you didn't pursue. Every dollar carries a hidden timeline. Every hour carries a direction. Most people don't stay broke because they don't earn. They stay broke because they don't calculate opportunity cost emotionally. They evaluate purchases in isolation instead of in trajectory. They see the car payment. They don't see the decade of delayed freedom attached to it. They see the comfort of today. They don't see the compound effect of restraint. Scarcity forces you to choose, but it also forces you to prioritize. The people who win financially aren't the ones with unlimited resources. They're the ones who treat every limited resource as strategic. Because in the end, wealth isn't built by earning alone. It's built by understanding what every decision quietly costs you in the future. 2. Trade. Why you can't do it alone. Imagine 2 people. Daniel grows apples. Leah grows bananas. Daniel is tired of apples. Leah is tired of bananas. They trade. Both win. That simple act, voluntary exchange, is the foundation of civilization. Trade allows specialization, and specialization creates efficiency. You don't refine oil, design microchips, and assemble your own smartphone from scratch. You focus on one skill, one output, one area where your time creates the most value, and you exchange that value for everything else you need. That's how modern wealth works. But here's where it gets deeper. Trade only works because of comparative advantage. You don't have to be the best in the world at something. You just have to be better at one thing relative to the alternatives available to you. If Daniel can grow both apples and bananas, but he sacrifices fewer apples when growing bananas than Leah would, then specialization still makes sense. Even if you're mediocre at everything, you can still win if you focus on the thing where you're least mediocre. That's not motivational fluff. That's economic survival. Most people waste years chasing absolute superiority, but markets reward relative efficiency. The person who understands their comparative advantage positions themselves strategically. They stop trying to dominate every field and instead dominate their lane. And that's why the person who identifies their edge early, even if it's small, escapes faster than the person chasing perfection everywhere. 3. Markets, the silent negotiation. Put scarcity, trade, and opportunity cost into one room, and you get a market. A market is nothing mystical. It's simply buyers and sellers negotiating through prices. It could be Wall Street moving billions in seconds. It could be a farmer's stall adjusting the price of tomatoes before they rot. It could be you at 2 a.m. sending proposals on a freelance platform, hoping someone across the world clicks accept. Markets run on incentives. If the price of something rises, more people want to sell it. If the price drops, more people want to buy it. Supply, demand. When those two forces collide, you get equilibrium. The price where the quantity people want equals the quantity available. It's not emotional, it's mechanical. But here's the cold part. Markets don't care about your feelings. They don't care if you're exhausted. They don't care if your background was difficult. They don't care if you believe you deserve more. They respond to signals: price, productivity, scarcity, value. If your skill is common, your wage signal is weak because supply is high. If your skill is rare and valuable, your wage signal is strong because demand outpaces supply. That's not cruelty. That's not morality. That's math. The market doesn't punish you personally. It simply reflects relative value. And once you understand that, you stop asking whether it's fair and start asking how to position yourself where demand is strongest. 4. Money, the lubricant of power. Before money, trade was inefficient and awkward. I'll trade you 3 chickens for your goat. But what if you don't want chickens? What if you already have too many goats? Barter required coincidence of wants, and that limited growth. Money solved that friction. Money is a medium of exchange, a unit of account, and a store of value. But at its core, money is stored choice. It is delayed decision-making power. When you earn money and don't immediately spend it, you are storing optionality. You are preserving the ability to act later, when a better opportunity appears, when leverage increases, when timing improves. That's what wealthy people understand deeply. Money isn't for showing. It's for choosing later. It represents flexibility, insulation, and negotiation power. But here's where things get dangerous. Most money isn't printed physically. It's created through debt. When a bank issues a mortgage, it doesn't pull stacks of cash from a vault. It creates new digital money in your account. That new money increases purchasing power in the system. More purchasing power increases demand. If supply doesn't rise equally, prices adjust upward. This is why inflation exists. More money chasing the same goods. And if wages don't rise as fast as prices, you lose silently. You don't feel it dramatically at first. Groceries creep up, rent inches higher, insurance premiums adjust. But over time, your purchasing power erodes. That's economic gravity. If your money isn't growing faster than inflation, it's slowly shrinking, even while sitting still. 5. Inflation, the quiet theft. Imagine you save $10,000. You feel disciplined, responsible, safe. That number sitting in your account represents effort, sacrifice, and restraint. Now inflation runs at 8%. 12 months later, your $10,000 still says $10,000 on the screen. Nothing visibly changed. But in reality, it now buys only about $9,200 worth of goods. You didn't spend anything. You didn't make a bad decision. Yet you lost purchasing power. That's the quiet nature of inflation. It doesn't knock on your door. It erodes you slowly. That's why wealthy individuals don't just save, they invest. Because idle money shrinks in real terms. If your capital isn't compounding at or above the rate of inflation, it's moving backward. Inflation punishes stagnation. It rewards ownership of productive assets, businesses, real estate, equities, commodities, things that adjust with or outpace rising prices. And here's the deeper truth. The people who understand inflation early position themselves before the crowd. They move capital into assets when others are still comfortable holding cash. They think in real returns, not nominal numbers. The people who don't understand inflation feel confused. Their income rises, yet life feels tighter. They make more, but groceries cost more. Rent costs more. Everything costs more. Without understanding inflation, it feels like running harder and staying in the same place. With understanding, you realize the game isn't about earning more money. It's about owning things that grow faster than money loses value. 6. GDP, measuring the machine. Zoom out. How do we measure an economy? We use GDP, gross domestic product. It's the total value of all final goods and services produced within a country in a year. Every car assembled, every haircut given, every software subscription sold. Add it all up, and you get a number that supposedly represents economic size. If more stuff is made, GDP rises. If less stuff is made, GDP falls. Simple in structure, powerful in influence. Markets react to it. Politicians campaign on it. News headlines obsess over it. But GDP doesn't measure happiness. It doesn't measure purpose. It doesn't measure whether growth came from medical breakthroughs or from rebuilding after a hurricane. It doesn't tell you if citizens feel secure or burned out. It's a blunt instrument, useful, imperfect. It measures output, not well-being. Still, over long periods, rising GDP usually signals rising living standards, and the core driver behind that rise is productivity. Productivity means more output per hour worked. The same human, the same 60 minutes, more value created. Technology increases productivity. Better systems increase productivity. Infrastructure increases productivity. Education increases productivity. When a farmer uses machinery instead of manual tools, output multiplies. When a worker uses software instead of paper, efficiency jumps. This is why some countries rise and others stagnate. It's not just effort. Many nations work hard. It's efficiency, how effectively land, labor, and capital combine to create value. Wealth, at a national level, is rarely about working longer. It's about producing more with less friction. 7. Business cycles, the emotional roller coaster. Economies don't grow in straight lines. They expand, they contract. Boom, recession, recovery. The pattern repeats across decades like a heartbeat. Growth builds confidence. Confidence fuels borrowing. Borrowing fuels expansion. Then something breaks. Credit tightens, demand weakens, fear spreads, and contraction begins. Sometimes crashes happen fast, like a market falling 30% in weeks. Sometimes they unfold slowly, like a quiet erosion of employment and spending over years. When demand collapses, companies cut costs, layoffs begin. When credit dries up, businesses can't expand, consumers pull back. Markets react instantly because markets price the future, not the present. And during downturns, the invisible hand feels less invisible. It feels violent. Retirement accounts shrink. Headlines amplify panic. People question systems they trusted months earlier. But here's the paradox most don't see in the moment. Crises create opportunity. Asset prices fall below intrinsic value. Weak businesses fail. Over-leveraged players disappear. Strong capital consolidates power quietly, while fear dominates headlines. Those who understand cycles accumulate during uncertainty. They prepare liquidity in good times. They reduce risk before excess peaks. They study history so downturns don't shock them. Those who panic sell at the bottom convert temporary volatility into permanent loss. The system doesn't reward emotion. It doesn't reward outrage or fear. It rewards preparation, discipline, and perspective. Every cycle eventually turns. The people who survive downturns with capital intact often emerge stronger than before. Because while the crowd reacts emotionally, the prepared positions strategically. 8. Government, the interference layer. Governments tax, they spend, they borrow. That's the basic rhythm of public finance. Taxes pull resources from households and businesses. Spending pushes those resources back into the economy through roads, schools, healthcare systems, defense, subsidies, and social programs. When spending exceeds tax revenue, a deficit appears. And when deficits repeat year after year, they accumulate into national debt. Debt isn't inherently evil. In fact, when used wisely, it can accelerate growth. Borrowing to build infrastructure, fund research, improve education, or stabilize the economy during a crisis can increase future GDP. A well-placed highway can unlock trade. A technological breakthrough funded by public investment can create entire industries. In those cases, debt functions like leverage, borrowing today to expand tomorrow. But if borrowed money funds short-term political comfort, temporary stimulus without productivity, or policies designed purely to win elections, the debt becomes heavy. Interest payments grow, and interest is non-negotiable. It compounds. Future taxpayers inherit the obligation, whether they agreed to it or not. Eventually, Debt servicing itself becomes one of the largest line items in a national budget. At that point, borrowing is no longer about growth. It's about maintenance. There's no free lunch. Every stimulus check, every bailout, every spending program is financed by taxes now, taxes later, or inflation. The bill always arrives, sometimes delayed, never erased. 9. Trade between nations, the global chessboard. No country makes everything. Not efficiently, not competitively, not sustainably. So countries trade: coffee for cars, semiconductors for oil, software for steel. One nation specializes in agriculture, another in advanced manufacturing, another in financial services or digital infrastructure. Comparative advantage scales globally. The same logic that applies to two neighbors trading apples and bananas applies to entire continents. Each country focuses on what it can produce relatively more efficiently and exchanges for the rest. Trade increases efficiency. It lowers prices. It expands variety. It accelerates technology transfer. Consumers benefit from cheaper goods. Businesses gain access to larger markets. Entire supply chains stretch across oceans, coordinating millions of workers who will never meet. But trade also redistributes pain. When manufacturing moves abroad for lower costs, factories close at home. Workers lose jobs. Communities built around one industry shrink. Skills that once commanded strong wages suddenly become obsolete. Free trade creates aggregate wealth, but it doesn't guarantee equal distribution of that wealth. The benefits are spread broadly, while the losses are concentrated painfully. That's where politics enters. Tariffs raise the cost of imports to protect domestic producers. Subsidies support local industries against foreign competition. Trade wars escalate when retaliation begins. Every intervention shifts incentives, and incentives change behavior. Companies relocate factories, investors redirect capital, consumers adjust spending. Trade isn't just economics, it's strategy, it's leverage, it's national interest. On the global chessboard, every move reshapes supply chains, alliances, and power balances. And understanding those incentives explains far more than headlines ever will. 10. Currencies. Trust as power. Money only works if people believe in it. Paper bills have no intrinsic value. Digital balances are just numbers on a screen. The only reason they command goods, labor, and resources is because millions of people collectively agree they do. That agreement is trust. If trust collapses, currency collapses. Hyperinflation isn't just about printing too much money. It's about printing too much money after confidence is already fragile. When governments overspend, mismanage debt, or lose political stability, people begin to question whether their money will hold value tomorrow. Once doubt enters the system, behavior shifts fast. People rush to convert cash into hard assets. They spend immediately before prices rise further. They hoard foreign currency perceived as safer. They move wealth offshore. Velocity increases. Money circulates faster because no one wants to hold it. That surge in spending drives prices even higher, reinforcing fear. It becomes a feedback loop. Trust erodes, prices spike, confidence weakens further. Eventually, the currency stops functioning as a store of value. In extreme cases, it stops functioning as a medium of exchange. At that point, people revert to alternatives: foreign currencies, gold, barter, digital assets, anything perceived as more stable. Trust is the backbone of economics. Markets function because contracts are honored. Banks function because deposits are believed to be redeemable. Governments function because citizens believe obligations will be met. Break trust, and the machine shakes. Break it long enough, and the system itself begins to fracture. 11. Labor, selling time. You wake up, you go to work. You exchange hours for money. That's the core transaction most adults live inside. Labor markets price time based on value creation, not effort alone. If your output generates $200 per hour for a company, you won't get paid $200. You'll get less. The difference is profit. That margin covers risk, overhead, reinvestment, and shareholder return. It's also the incentive for firms to exist in the first place. No profit, no expansion. No expansion, no hiring. Wages depend on several forces moving simultaneously: skills, scarcity, negotiation power, and market demand. If many people can do what you do, supply is high and wages compress. If few people can replicate your output, scarcity strengthens your leverage. Automation replaces repetitive labor because machines don't negotiate, don't sleep, and don't ask for raises. Globalization replaces expensive labor with cheaper labor elsewhere because capital flows toward efficiency. That's not personal, that's structural. Markets optimize for cost and productivity. If your skill can be replaced cheaply or replicated easily, your bargaining power weakens. If your skill is rare, complex, and high impact, meaning it directly influences revenue, efficiency, or strategic direction, your bargaining power strengthens. The uncomfortable reality is that labor is a market like any other. Price adjusts based on supply and demand. Understanding that shifts the focus from working harder to positioning smarter. You don't escape wage pressure by effort alone. You escape it by increasing the value density of your time. 12. Finance, making money from money. Once you have surplus, money left after covering survival, you enter a different game. You're no longer just selling time, you're deploying capital. Stocks represent ownership in companies. Bonds represent loans to governments or corporations. Real estate represents tangible, income-producing assets. Businesses represent leverage, systems that generate output beyond your personal labor. Risk and return are linked. Higher potential return usually means higher volatility. Assets that promise dramatic gains can also collapse dramatically. That's the trade-off. Diversification spreads risk across different assets, so one failure doesn't destroy everything. But here's what most people misunderstand. Investing isn't gambling. It's participating in productivity. When you buy a broad index fund, you're not just betting on price movement. You're owning a slice of businesses that design software, build infrastructure, produce energy, and deliver services. You're tied to the output of millions of workers and innovators. As productivity rises, profits rise. As profits rise, long-term asset values tend to follow. You benefit from innovation, from growth, from human progress itself. Wealth at scale isn't built through hype cycles or viral trades. It's built through compounding, small, consistent inputs over long periods with discipline. Compounding doesn't look impressive early. It looks slow, almost boring. But time magnifies consistency. The real edge in finance isn't prediction, it's patience. Those who understand that treat capital like a seed, not a lottery ticket. And over decades, that difference becomes enormous. 13. Development. Why some nations escape and others don't. Why is one country wealthy while another struggles for decades? It's rarely just effort. Many developing nations work just as hard, sometimes harder, than wealthy ones. The difference often lies in structure, not sweat. Institutions matter. Property rights, rule of law, education systems, political stability. These form the invisible scaffolding of economic growth. When individuals know they can own land securely, protect their inventions, and keep the rewards of their labor, they invest. They take risks. They build. Without secure ownership, why improve your farm if it can be seized? Without reliable courts, why sign a contract if it won't be enforced? Without functioning infrastructure, roads, ports, electricity, digital networks, productivity stalls, regardless of ambition. Geography also shapes outcomes. Access to trade routes lowers costs and increases opportunity. Landlocked nations face higher transportation barriers. Harsh climates or heavy disease burdens reduce labor efficiency and strain public health systems. These constraints compound over time. Development is complex. There is no single magic lever that turns poverty into prosperity overnight. Foreign aid alone doesn't solve it. Natural resources alone don't guarantee it. History shows a consistent pattern. Societies that protect incentives for productivity, where innovation is rewarded, corruption is constrained, and long-term investment feels safe, tend to rise. Societies that distort incentives through instability, weak institutions, or systemic corruption tend to stagnate. Wealth at a national scale isn't accidental. It's the cumulative result of structures that either encourage value creation or quietly suffocate it. 14. Behavioral economics, the flaw in the machine. Traditional economics assumes rational actors. Calm decision-makers who weigh costs and benefits objectively, maximize utility, and optimize outcomes with perfect logic. Humans aren't rational. We are emotional, biased, impatient, and deeply influenced by context. We fear loss more than we value gain. Losing $1,000 hurts more than gaining $1,000 feels good. That's loss aversion. We overvalue immediate reward and discount the future. $100 today feels more powerful than $150 next month. That's hyperbolic discounting. We follow crowds because social proof feels safe. If everyone is buying, we assume they know something. If everyone is selling, we assume danger. We anchor to irrelevant numbers. If a stock once traded at $100, we assume $60 is cheap, even if fundamentals changed. These cognitive shortcuts shape financial behavior daily. We spend emotionally. Retail therapy feels like relief. We invest impulsively when headlines promise easy gains. We panic collectively when markets fall, amplifying volatility. That's why bubbles form. Excess optimism drives prices far above intrinsic value. That's why crashes cascade. Fear spreads faster than logic, and selling accelerates itself. In theory, markets are efficient. In reality, they are driven by human psychology, and psychology swings between greed and fear. That's why discipline beats intelligence in markets. You don't need to predict perfectly. You need to manage emotion. The investor who controls impulse often outperforms the investor who chases excitement. Because while markets are powered by math, they are moved by human behavior. And human behavior is rarely calm. 15. Systems. Capitalism, socialism, reality. Pure capitalism, rare. Pure socialism, also rare. Most modern economies operate somewhere in between, blending market forces with government intervention. Markets allocate most goods and services because price signals efficiently coordinate supply and demand. Businesses compete, consumers choose, capital flows toward profit, but markets alone don't address everything. Governments step in to correct externalities: pollution, public health risks, financial instability. They fund public goods like roads, courts, defense, and education. They create social programs that redistribute income partially to reduce extreme inequality and provide safety nets. The reality is a mixed system. Every country adjusts the dial differently. Some lean heavily toward free markets with minimal intervention. Others emphasize redistribution and state planning more aggressively. But no system operates in ideological purity for long, because real economies are complex. Every system faces trade-offs: efficiency versus equality, innovation versus stability, freedom versus control. Push too far toward unregulated markets, and inequality can widen sharply. Push too far toward centralized control, and incentives weaken, slowing productivity and innovation. There is no perfect equilibrium, only shifting balance based on culture, history, politics, and crisis. Economic systems evolve over time, reacting to shocks, technological change, and public sentiment. The debate between capitalism and socialism often sounds absolute. In practice, most nations continuously adjust their mix, searching for a balance between growth and fairness, dynamism and protection. Economics isn't a static ideology. It's an ongoing negotiation between competing priorities. The final truth: economics isn't about money. It's about choices under constraint. Every decision you make exists inside limits. Limited time, limited energy, limited capital. Scarcity forces prioritization. Trade enables specialization. Markets coordinate signals. Money stores optionality. Inflation erodes passivity. Productivity creates wealth. Trust sustains systems. Pull on any thread in the economy, and it leads back to one core principle: incentives. Everything ties back to incentives. People respond to them whether they realize it or not. Companies respond. Governments respond. Entire nations respond. If you understand incentives, you understand behavior. If you understand behavior, you understand markets. If you understand markets, you understand power. Who has it, how it moves, and why it concentrates. And once you understand power, you stop playing blindly. You stop making purely emotional decisions. You start positioning. You start asking better questions. Who benefits? Who pays? What's the trade-off? What's the hidden cost? Because economics isn't abstract. It's the invisible architecture shaping your daily life. The rent you pay, the job you choose, the assets you hold, the currency you trust, the opportunities you pursue. You can't escape economics, but you can understand it. And once you do, you stop reacting. You start calculating. And that's when the game changes. All right, that is all my study and analysis on economics compressed into this video just for you. I hope you find this helpful. My name is Thomas, and this is Afix Lite.